Hello everyone, welcome back. Welcome back to Shred Guitar in the 80s. Today's going to be a fun day for me because I get to talk about Randy Rhoads, one of my favorite all-time guitar players and one of my biggest early influences. Early on, it was Eddie Van Halen and then Randy Rhoads were like my two big guitar heroes. I was a huge fan of the first Blizzard of Oz album. I just tried to learn every riff I could off that album. I was taking lessons at the time and I would just take every week something from Randy Rhoads or Eddie Van Halen into my guitar teacher for him to show me. And I would spend hours at the turntable trying to figure the songs out before I realized I could transfer it onto cassette tape and it was easier. So as soon as Diary of a Madman came out, I rushed to the store immediately and bought it. I was waiting for it to come out. I remember reading that it was coming out soon, and I would go down to the record store and check the release dates. And when I saw Diary of a Madman was going to be released, I just bought it immediately. And I remember going home and putting the album on, just being blown away by the production. The sound of it was so much better than the Blizzard of Oz. And the first song on the album was Over the Mountain, which was just a scorcher. And when the solo came, my jaw just dropped open. Randy's use of scales and the classical influences just blew me away. He actually starts the solo out with a G-sharp 5 power chord, and what he's playing over that goes like this. Which is really cool, and it's very similar to little Black Sabbath action, kind of maybe a tip of the hat to some Black Sabbath. And then he goes to C-sharp 5, and he plays out of the C-sharp minor scale, which is a really nice area to play in, and he plays this figure. And he's doing a really neat scale sequence where he's mixing up pull-offs with pick notes. Here it is slow. And then he does just straight up the minor pentatonic in G sharp. When you do that little trill, you're kind of pulling up when your finger hits 19 behind the neck. And then he does this really cool descending run in E minor, but he's just throwing in a Dorian note for a second. And here's that lick really slow so you can check out what I'm doing. And then he does an open string pull-off lick in D Dorian with the blues note added. When he lands on that 3, he does a bar thing. And then he slides up and he plays it 12, 13, 14, pull off to 12. So he lands on that 13, which is the major third of E. So you get. So I got into Randy when I was about 14 years old, right when the Blizzard stuff came out. And I used to buy Hit Parader magazine every month. And this issue from about 2 years after his death has an interview with Randy that had been unpublished prior to that. And it's really cool. It's got some nice photos. The interesting thing about this interview is they asked him what his biggest influences were. And he said that he loved Mountain and he thought Leslie West was one of the greatest guitar players ever. He also said he listened to a lot of Ritchie Blackmore and Deep Purple as a kid and some Jeff Beck. But he said he loved a lot of different players. I do remember reading in an interview where he talked about liking Michael Schenker and Alan Holdsworth and players like that. So Randy listened to a wide selection of players. And teaching guitar, he said people would bring in different things all the time for him to learn. He was getting exposed to all these different guitar players. So Randy really had a wealth of knowledge to draw from. And he was probably the most schooled of the LA guys too. Randy was very schooled. He really knew his theory. As shown in some of these examples where he's playing off the chords more than he is just thinking diatonically. Another really great example of Randy's scale use is from the song Flying High Again. The solo, he's going from F sharp to like a D sus2. And the cool thing is Randy's playing off each chord. I mean, you could just do F sharp minor over both those chords. But what Randy's doing is over the F sharp minor chord, he's playing Aeolian with a blues note, kind of the Aeolian blues mixed. And then over this chord, he's playing D major. So over the first chord, he's playing this. And then, when he goes to here, he goes. Which creates a really cool sound, and his picking on that's awesome. He's really articulate. The bottom part of the lick I've seen tabbed out a million ways, and I listened to the isolated guitar in this solo, and to me it sounds like he's doing this. It's really neat, the sound of it. So that scale slow would be, that's Aeolian and blues mixed. Then he jumps down to the D major. And then he just runs right up F sharp minor pentatonic doing a little sequence. And then he goes to the, so he goes 14, 15 like a trill, and then plays 16 on the third. So the whole solo slow goes like this. Does a cool little sextuplet thing. If you're into learning more about Randy Rhoads, I really recommend this book by Joe McIver. It's called Crazy Train, The High Life and Tragic Death of Randy Rhoads. It's just chock full of all sorts of information with great interviews from people that were around Randy during the era. And it has some nice photos mixed in also. But it's just really a great read. I really enjoyed this book immensely, and I've read it twice. It's got some great early photos of Randy when he was a young kid at the music store. The classic Quiet Riot shots in here. He's got some more Quiet Riot photos. He used to wear the old polka dotted vest back then. And then he's got some great Ozzy photos. This one with the classical guitar is classic. That was a shoot for Guitar World magazine. Guitar World magazine actually did an interview with Randy. It had Adrian Belew on the cover. And that was like a month or the month that he died. I remember carrying that book around constantly, that magazine. I was just so into Randy, and when he died, I just couldn't believe it. But anyway, this is a great book, and if you're into learning more, I really recommend it. It's got an afterword by Yngwie Malmsteen also. Today's CD pick is a fun one. It's by a player that actually replaced Randy in Quiet Riot, and that's Carlos Cavazo. And before he joined Quiet Riot, he had played many years in a band called Snow. And a few years back, they released this really cool collection, an anthology of unreleased demos, and a really killer live concert. And Carlos just rips on it. I really like Carlos playing. I'm just a fan of all the LA players, you know, from Warren to Randy to Eddie to Jakey Lee. All those guys are great. And the Quiet Riot album, you know, that was a huge one for me back in the day. I loved it. But this is a lot of fun. It actually has like Mental Health. The riff from Mental Health was used in a song with Snow. And it's kind of great blues rock, kind of in the little bit of the Van Halen mode there. It does some up-tempo boogies and stuff. And if you're a fan of the LA guitar movement of the early 80s, I really recommend you getting this. It's called Snow at Last, and it's a 2 CD set. Well, thanks a lot for joining me today. I really had fun talking about Randy Rhoads, one of my biggest early influences, and I always have fun talking about him and playing his licks. If you do like this, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And to those of you that have, I really appreciate it. And thanks for all the nice comments. So have fun, go listen to some Randy, and have fun picking.